I'm continuing the discussion with Ivars Ijabs. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you for having me.
We are discussing about this so-called online Schengen, putting everything together and being interoperable. Let's explain how should this be implemented in the member states.
First of all, I think that we have to finalize the real Schengen, the physical Schengen, also by accepting Romania and Bulgaria as members of the Eurozone, because this is an area of freedom. But in digital terms, I think that what is the most important thing is that all the systems that have been built up across all the member states, that services that have been provided online and are provided online, like, well, customs services, like whatever, when we are paying for the parking place in another country, that those systems have to be interoperable among the member states, which means that, well, also people who are living cross-border, for example, they live in one country and work in another, that they could be able to use those systems in both places without any obstacles. Right now, unfortunately, we have still 27 different public service systems that are not always talking to each other. My point is, when working on this file, is that we have to make them to talk to each other, especially regarding those systems that have been built up by using European money, by using European funds. I come from Latvia, which also has a lot of different kinds of digital systems being built up in the last years. The idea is that we have to connect them together in order to make the Europeans' life more easy and more comfortable.
Is it really possible to do it? It sounds very complicated, really.
Well, it is complicated, and what we are also not doing, we are not trying to impose one and the same standard for each and every member state. But what we are trying to do is to incentivize the governments, including the local governments, to think about interoperability and how their systems will be working with each other. For example, in local municipalities, when municipality is setting up a web page for their communal services and so on and so forth, the system should be also used without any obstacles from other member states. And in this way, we are going to promote, first of all, the life of our citizens, but also the businesses, because we all know that the business is very often going online and also using those services provided by public authorities.
We have to scan a lot of documents. We have to find a lot of documents that are part of our lives, from birth certificates to, I don't know, diplomas from school, some analyses taken at the doctor, and so on and so forth. How much time do we need to, or do we have to do all these?
Well, we are working on the so-called EU digital wallet, which would include the documents you just mentioned, but also documents like, for example, the driver's license, your diplomas, your medical information, which could be used in all the member states across the European Union. Of course, this is not very easy to work with some countries who have, well, let's say, less flexible domestic systems regarding digitalization. As far as I know, Romania, just like my own country, we are investing heavily in digitalization and digital services everywhere, but not all countries are like that. There are countries who are, well, much more conservative because they have their centuries-long traditions of public administration, and they are not very happy to go digital. Well, this is my task here in the European Parliament, also working with my Romanian colleagues like Mr. Falca, for example, to get over this conservatism and to really make the digital life of European societies more comfortable.
In general, people are thinking that maybe it's not safe for them. also the authorities are thinking that what they are seeing on a screen might not be the real document. So how can we cope with these kind of situations?
First of all, trust is crucial, without any doubt, because of course you just can't ask people to use services that if they are not secure about their privacy, about the security of their data. But nevertheless, there are quite good European technologies that are really taking care of this particular dimension with multiple points verification and so on and so forth. The problem is right now that, for example, things like internet banking, of course, it has its problems everywhere, but nevertheless, banks are still capable of dealing with those security issues. If public services are not capable of doing the same thing in their domains, this is a shame because, banks are dealing with money. And of course, this is important, and that's why there are multiple technologies how we can ensure that the personal data are being protected. Well, if the public services are not capable of doing the same thing, there's something might be wrong.
Yes, but on the other hand, if we are talking about banks or any private company, if there's a problem, there's a huge problem for them also, and they might lose clients, they might lose money, and so on and so forth. When we are discussing about the public authorities, they are not losing clients, they are not losing money, and it's not actually their problem.
Well, this is a problem that the state is always a monopoly, in the sense they are not competing with each other, but at the same time, I think that democracy is still a mechanism which can ensure that politicians and decision makers are accountable to their electorates, and that's why
or should be at least. Or should be.
Or it should at least be. But that's why, for example, we are taking issues like personal data and GDPR here in the European Parliament very seriously, because we understand if there is any big data breach, so it would reflect also on our political futures.
Let's explain a little bit how will us make the system interoperable in terms of parking or any other things that are somehow local and part of the system of a member state and should be integrated with something totally different. Who's going to do this actually?
Well, first of all, what we say in public services that they are going massively digital right now, because digital is the future. They are setting up new systems, or they are restoring or upgrading the old ones. Our point is not to press them to cooperate, because this wouldn't be the best way to do that. But we ask them to think about interoperability of their systems in advance before they have been built up, because sometimes it's many hundreds of thousands or even millions of money which is being invested in those systems. When you have a system, please do what we sometimes call this interoperability check, which means that before you set it up, you check it whether it will be compatible with other systems, and also to make that information available. If, for example, your neighboring municipality, let's say between Romania and Hungary, if your neighboring municipality is willing to join in to make just the cross-border interactions more active, then there is an information, there is a standard which is available in order to make those systems cooperate. So in that sense, we are not pressing to impose one standard for the whole Europe, because of course this is for the member states, for municipalities, to themselves to decide on particular form of systems they are going to set up. But what we are trying to introduce is a standard of interoperability and availability of information. For example, there is an institution in all member states called the land register, where, for example, where your property is being registered. Well, what we want is if a member state is willing to introduce a new system, for example, for the land register, it has to think about whether this land register of Romania, for example, would be capable of talking to land register in Latvia, for example, because this might sometimes be a very necessary thing in order to make, let's say, the business relations more easy, or tax authorities, and things like that. In that sense, I think that, well, we are not trying to impose one standard from above, but we are trying to motivate the authorities on all levels, including European systems, the systems of the European Union, to talk to each other and to think about the possible interoperability solutions.
Thank you so much for this discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Vouă celor de acasă vă spun să rămâneți pe Antena 3 CNN. Nu uitați că ne revedem și sâmbătă viitoare la 9:30. Cu bine și sănătoși să fim!